Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today, because we're going to unpack one of the most fascinating and frankly contrasting realities of the year 2026. Right now as we speak, the world is experiencing this unprecedented global divergence. On one hand, we've got severe physical and geopolitical turmoil. We're talking devastating energy shocks, strained power grids, and kinetic conflicts that are just throwing global supply chains into total chaos. But on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, we're witnessing this skyrocketing, totally gravity-defying optimism in the digital tech economy, which is fueled almost entirely by the rapid evolution of artificial intelligence. So today, we're going to put these two extremes side by side and explore exactly how they are hurtling right toward each other.
So let's dive right into this core mystery. It might seem like the boardrooms of Silicon Valley and the geopolitical choke points of the Middle East exist in completely different universes. One is built on code, algorithms, and vast virtual spaces, while the other is grounded in physical shipping lanes, naval mines, and the heavy reality of crude oil. But as you'll see today, our seemingly limitless digital future is actually totally tethered to a very fragile physical world. How exactly does a tanker explosion off the coast of Oman threaten the whole AI revolution? Let's find out.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The Middle East flashpoint. 2. The 2026 energy shock. 3. The global economic ripple. 4. The trillion-dollar tech race. And 5. The physical cost of AI.
All right, Section 1. The Middle East flashpoint. Supply chain disruption. Okay, so here is the rapid sequence of events that brought us to where we are right now. On February 28th, the conflict officially started, which was an event where Iran's supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei sustained minor injuries. In the months that followed that, global markets kind of collectively held their breath, as maritime insurance premiums quietly skyrocketed and shipping routes grew increasingly perilous. Well, this mounting tension finally snapped in late May. On May 25th, the United States Central Command conducted what it described as self-defensive airstrikes targeting missile launchers and vessels in southern Iran. And then, literally just one day later, on May 26th, the Greek-owned oil tanker Olympic Life struck an unidentified object and exploded off the coast of Oman, resulting in a massive oil spill.
Right now, there's a really stark contrast between the diplomatic efforts going on and the grim logistical reality out on the water. While fragile ceasefire negotiations are indeed currently happening in Doha, Qatar, the physical reality is that the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed. There are widespread reports of naval mines scattered throughout these absolutely critical waters. So honestly, even if a peace agreement is miraculously signed tomorrow, sources indicate it would take a full 30-day, highly specialized operation just to clear those naval mines and safely reopen the strait to commercial shipping. That is a massive, practically immovable physical bottleneck.
Moving on to Section 2. The 2026 energy shock, real-world crisis.
Because the Strait of Hormuz is virtually closed, we're looking at one of the most significant global energy supply disruptions in recent history. The raw numbers are just staggering. Seaborne flows of crude oil have completely dropped off by 15%, and liquefied natural gas, or LNG, has plummeted by 20%. The direct consequence of this severe restriction in supply is that crude oil prices have surged an astonishing 65% just between late February and late April.
Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, didn't we just go through a huge energy shock a few years ago? Well, we did, but the underlying mechanics here are completely different. The 2022 Russian gas shock was relatively localized to Europe because it was highly dependent on fixed pipeline infrastructure. Think of pipelines like a dedicated garden hose running to a single specific house. The 2026 Hormuz energy shock, however, is a massive global disruption because seaborne oil and LNG are highly fungible commodities. They're shipped globally across the oceans. It's a lot more like a city's main water supply. When the pressure drops at the source, absolutely everyone down the line feels the impact simultaneously, spreading those price pressures super rapidly across the entire global economy.
Section 3. The global economic ripple, macroeconomic headwinds.
The European Union provides a really perfect snapshot of this drag on the physical economy. According to the spring 2026 economic forecast, this energy shock has forced a pretty painful downgrade in economic growth. EU GDP growth is expected to slow down to an absolute crawl at just 1.1% this year. Meanwhile, inflation, driven largely by those surging energy prices we just talked about, is expected to jump right back up to 3.1%. So what does this actually mean for you and me? It means literally everything that requires physical energy to produce, manufacture, or transport, from your weekly groceries to your next piece of consumer electronics, is about to get significantly more expensive.
And this ripple effect, it gets wildly erratic when it finally hits local commodity markets. Take Vietnam, for example. amidst all this global volatility, the domestic price for SJC gold suddenly dropped by $800,000 to nearly 1 million Vietnamese dong per tal, which is a traditional unit of weight for gold in Asia, in a single trading session. This just goes to show how deeply sensitive, interconnected, and highly reactive global markets are to sudden physical supply chain disruptions.
To make matters even more complicated, compounding this economic strain is severe physical climate stress. Back in late May, an unprecedented heat dome settled heavily right over Western Europe. London hit a staggering 34.8 degrees Celsius, which actually shattered an 80-year temperature record for the month of May. What this means in practical terms is that millions of people turned on their air conditioning units at exactly the moment the energy grid was at its most vulnerable, and fuel prices were skyrocketing.
Which brings us to Section 4, the trillion-dollar tech race, the digital boom.
$1 trillion. Just let that sink in for a second. Despite the geopolitical wars, the naval blockades, the creeping inflation, and the straining power grids we just went over, a Bank of America forecast projects that global semiconductor revenue will surge past the $1 trillion mark for the first time ever in 2026. It is truly awe-inspiring. The artificial intelligence boom hasn't cooled off at all. In fact, it is aggressively accelerating, and it seems totally detached from the physical crumbling of the world around it.
The engine behind this unprecedented boom really relies on two vital pillars. Think of NVIDIA as the brain of AI. They design and manufacture the highly specialized chips that actually crunch the algorithms and process the massive amounts of data. Then you have Broadcom acting as the nervous system. They provide the complex, super vital networking infrastructure that physically connects thousands of these chips together so they can rapidly communicate in sync. To truly grasp the scale of this financial optimism, we just need to look at the raw numbers. A single NVIDIA GPU, just one used for training AI, costs around 30 grand. Because of the basically insatiable global demand for these components, NVIDIA is projected to generate roughly $500 billion in free cash flow over just the next 3 years. Meanwhile, Broadcom's market cap has absolutely skyrocketed. While critical shipping lanes in the Middle East are frantically scrambling for fuel, Broadcom's market cap is casually sitting at $1.6 trillion. It is a level of wealth creation that honestly feels almost surreal.
And finally, Section 5, the physical cost of AI, data centers and power.
All right, here is exactly where these two completely different worlds violently crash together. Because the digital cloud isn't just floating weightlessly in the sky, right? It lives in massive buildings on the ground, and it is incredibly expensive. $60 billion is the estimated financial capital required to build out just one single 1-gigawatt AI data center. The sheer scale of physical infrastructure needed to support this trillion-dollar tech boom is absolutely immense.
Let's break that $60 billion down a bit. About half of it goes straight into hardware, buying all those $30,000 NVIDIA brains and Broadcom nervous systems. But once you rack all of that hardware, plug it in and turn it on, you need power. A 1-gigawatt facility is an immense, continuous drain on the local power grid. It requires jaw-dropping amounts of electricity to run the chips and pump the industrial water cooling systems. And remember those fragile physical energy grids we talked about earlier? The ones threatened by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and strained to the breaking point by historic heat domes? Well, that is exactly where AI gets its power.
Which leaves us with this final, absolutely crucial question. The digital economy is booming, but it is fundamentally, inescapably tethered to the physical world. If global shipping lanes remain blocked, if energy prices remain stubbornly high, and if our power grids continue to buckle under climate stress, can the trillion-dollar AI revolution actually sustain itself? Or are these two realities on a direct, completely unavoidable collision course? It's definitely a fascinating tension to watch unfold in 2026. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep questioning how the physical and digital worlds connect around you.